Hello students, so this is a quick revision video for Essay 250 at CA final level, consideration of laws and regulations in an audit of financial statements. So when we talk about laws and regulations, obviously there are so many laws and regulations applicable to an entity. But when you see from auditor's angle, you are not concerned about every single law and regulation that is applicable to the entity. You will be worried about such laws and regulations which can directly or indirectly have a material impact, have a material effect, material impact on the financial statements. And that is what SA 250 is asking you to focus upon. Look at this classification of laws and regulations that are applicable to the entity. Anything that is dealing with applicable financial reporting framework like Schedule 3, Ind AS, obviously will be worried about that. Apart from applicable financial reporting framework, there are so many such laws and provisions which can directly have a material effect on the financial statements. Yes, for example, taxation laws. Directly it has an impact on the calculation of TDS, then advance tax, then provisions to be shown or contingent liabilities based upon show cause notice, demand notice. All right, so these are the laws that can materially impact financial statements, and that also have a direct effect on the financial statements, direct effect on the determination of material amounts and disclosures. Spare my handwriting because I'm going too fast over here. Direct effect on the determination of material amounts and disclosures like taxation laws. Then there are other laws which may not directly calculate the amounts and disclosures, but it can indirectly have a huge impact, like for example child labor laws or environment protection laws. If these laws are violated, the whole operation can be shut down, so the non-compliance can have a material impact over there. Other laws indirectly having a material effect on the financial statements. Non-compliance with such laws can lead to significant fines, penalties and stuff, as I told you, like child labor laws, or environment protection laws. So auditor is worried about these categories: laws which can have a direct effect on the financial statements, and laws which indirectly can have a material impact on the financial statements because of their non-compliance. For laws which may be important but do not have a direct material impact on the financial position or financial statements of the entity, because they may not be having a direct impact on the calculation of material amounts, nor their penalties will be huge, then in that case auditor of financial statement will not be worried about such laws and regulations. Yes. So what is the objective of the auditor? For such laws where you have a direct effect, obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. For laws which have an indirect impact, for those laws where non-compliance can be material like child labor, environment protection, obviously for that they have given some specified procedures to be performed. So for laws having direct effect, we clearly say obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. For laws which have an indirect effect over there where non-compliance could be material, to perform some specific procedures which are given in SA 250. And then if you find out a non-compliance or a suspected non-compliance, how to respond to that, how to report that in our audit report, and what are the other reporting responsibilities. That is what SA 250 is worried about. All right, so there are two discussions on the procedural part of SA 250, and then there is one discussion on the reporting part of SA 250, and then we are done and dusted over here. All right, now look at this. When we talk about the procedural part, obviously SA 250 would want you to first obtain an understanding of the laws and regulations and how entity is complying with such laws and regulations, correct? So first is always risk assessment procedure, obtain an understanding of the legal framework and how entity is complying with such laws, like use auditor's existing understanding of the entity, update the understanding of, update your understanding, use your existing understanding, inquire of the management about the laws and regulations and their impact. Then for all the laws and regulations which have a material effect, for that we need to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. Yes sir, yes sir. Okay, and then they have given some example like industry specific financial reporting issues, like banking industry as a specific financial reporting framework over there. Then accounting for transactions under government contracts, accrual or recognition of income expense for tax or retirement benefits. So they are just giving you examples of such laws and regulations which can have a material impact on the financial statements. All right, and the laws where non-compliance could be material over there, obviously I'm not going to go to the factory, where is the child, I'm going to perform some inquiries, I'm going to conduct some inquiries, and I will verify if there has been any communication between the regulator and the entity. For example, communication between Telecom Regulatory Authority of India and Bharti Airtel. So I'm going to conduct inquiries and I'm going to inspect correspondence, that is communication between the entity and the licensing authority, to find out whether there has been any query on the entity regarding such laws where non-compliance could be material. All right, after that, as an auditor, I need to remain alert to the possibility that, while verifying even normal vouching verification stuff, I may find out non-compliances. Like for example, while verifying sales invoice, my team may find out Yes, non-compliance with GST laws, correct? So they are asking you to remain alert, so that means maintain an attitude of professional skepticism. And what are those other procedures? That means you are not specifically performing procedure for SA 250, but you are trying to perform some other procedures, and you ended up finding out non-compliance, like reading mom minutes of meeting, then conducting inquiries with the legal counsel. In SA 501 we conduct inquiries with legal counsel, and then performing other substantive procedures like vouching of invoices, correct? So minutes of meeting, inquiries, and performing other substantive procedures where we may end up finding out the non-compliance, correct? And then we are asked to take written representations from management and TCWG that management those charged with governance. If at all there are non-compliances which you are aware of, then you have disclosed it to me. Please give it to me in writing. So first, obtain an understanding. Then laws which have a direct effect, for that obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. Laws which have an indirect effect, for such laws and regulations where non-compliance could material, perform specific procedures like conducting inquiry and inspecting correspondence. And then maintain an attitude of professional skepticism. Yes. And then please obtain written representation. So ODIP W, ODIP written, or whatever you want, you can put it over there. But these are the audit procedures to be performed. So kind of questions that can be asked. Every single box that you see over here could be an examination question. All right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay. Now we are moving to the discussion that after performing these procedures, what if you find out some non-compliances, or you find some suspected non-compliances where you feel that things could be very material over there. So if now this is a very specific question, if it is asked, a very specific question, if they throw you at this stage, then don't start from the beginning of the essay. That means you have to continue from here. All right. So what you see in this red, if this is asked in the question, that means you are supposed to continue from here. Just imagine as if you are conducting audit of Bharti Airtel and you saw that there is a notice from Telecom Regulatory Authority of India. Now what are you going to do? If auditor identifies non-compliance or suspected non-compliance, first of all I want to obtain understanding of that particular notice, what has happened, and also the understanding of the laws and regulations, because being an auditor of financial statements, I may not be an expert of Telecom Regulatory Authority of India. So obtain an understanding of the nature of the act and the circumstances under which it has occurred. All right. So first try to understand things. Then try to understand, evaluate what could be its impact on the financial statement, because being an auditor of financial statements, I'm always worried about the impact on the financial statements. Further information to evaluate the possible effect of non-compliance on the financial statements, trying to understand what could be the financial consequence, what kind of disclosure is required in the financial statement, or whether there is a provision required for penalties. All right. Sometimes the non-compliance could be huge, questioning the going concern of the entity. All right. So obtain an understanding and perform some evaluation of its impact on the financial statements. Then please go and discuss the matter with management, and where appropriate those charged with governance. If they do not provide sufficient information for us to understand whether the entity is complying with the laws or not, and if I believe that my god this non-compliance could be material, if they do not provide sufficient information, yes, straight away what? Consider impact on opinion and stuff. Wait man, wait. Then consider the need to obtain legal advice. Consider the need to obtain legal advice. Now regarding what is your responsibility and what could be the impact, try to obtain such evidence. If there is a lack of sufficient and appropriate audit evidence, if still there is a lack of sufficient and appropriate audit evidence, of course then you will consider impact on opinion, because there is a LOSA, limitation on scope of audit, so we'll consider impact on opinion, but the reporting part I will discuss on this page. All right. Auditor shall re-evaluate. Obviously you will be worried about whether there whether the management, those charged with governance, whether they are still reliable or not. So I should re-evaluate the integrity of the management. I should reassess, my god, now I am too much worried. I should reassess the risk of material misstatement, and till date whatever they have given us in writing, whether that was reliable or not, because the main people itself are not turning out to be reliable. So whatever they have signed, whether it is reliable or not, I need to evaluate the reliability of written representations. Yes sir, yes sir, yes sir. All right. So this is how you are going to deal with the answer. If auditor identifies non-compliance or suspected non-compliance, this could be a completely separate question over here. They have tested this in recent RTPs, MTPs also. All right, all right. Then when we talk about reporting non-compliance to TCWG, reporting non-compliance in audit report, reporting non-compliance to regulatory authorities. So if you have found child labor, will you straight away report it to the labor ministry? Wait man. Auditor needs to act as per the laws and regulations that are applicable, and whatever responsibility of auditor is defined in those applicable laws and regulations. Understood this? So if there is any circular which says that as an auditor I need to report this, then obviously I will report it. All right, but unnecessarily I will not keep on reporting to the regulatory authorities. That does not mean that I will ignore that in my audit report, but I am saying that separate report to regulatory authorities will be sent only if it is your statutory duty under the applicable laws and regulation. So reporting non-compliance to regulatory authorities, this will be done. It will be done if it is within the scope of auditor's duty. If it is within the scope of auditor's duty, I will do it, because auditor is not expected to perform duties beyond his scope. Yes, so if it is prescribed in the laws and regulations, I will do it. Reporting non-compliance in audit reports, so whatever, because of the non-compliance, whatever provision was required, penalty, that entry or disclosure, whatever it is. All right. Once you have identified the non-compliance, you will ask management to put up that entry or disclosure. If they don't do it, that means they are not rectifying some misstatements, and that can have an impact on opinion. So reporting non-compliance in audit report, if non-compliance is, if it is not reflected properly in the financial statements, obviously if it is material, then in that case there will be an impact on opinion. And there are, I have my lectures on YouTube. My in-house students already have an expertise in developing an opinion. So when you have obtained sufficient and appropriate audit evidence, if there is a material misstatement which is not rectified, then in that case it could be either qualified or adverse opinion. Yes sir, yes sir, yes sir. All right. Reporting non-compliance in audit report, if sufficient and appropriate audit evidence is not obtained, that means there is a limitation on scope of audit, then it could be either qualified or disclaimer of an opinion. Yes sir, yes sir. But before you go to audit report and stuff, there has to be a separate reporting done to those charged with governance. That is the requirement of this essay, because if it is material, you need to report it, right, to TCWG, because they are the ones who are going to answer to the people. So reporting non-compliance to TCWG, if non-compliance is material, then you need to report it to TCWG. Yes, all the consequences and whatever, who was involved and everything, you need to report it, whatever evidence you have got, to TCWG. Yes, if management is involved, if you think that management is involved, then report ASAP to TCWG. However, after communicating with TCWG, if you realize that if management and TCWG both are involved, my God, then in that case you are going to consider the need to obtain legal advice. I am saying please don't go on my handwriting. I am going very fast over here, so I don't have too much time to write. So I hope you can hear me very clearly. Then consider the need to obtain legal advice. Yes sir, yes sir. Hello. In such cases, auditor may also consider withdrawal from the engagement. You need to obtain legal advice regarding what will be your responsibility over here. Yes, yes. Okay. Now, listen. Why I said consider the need to obtain legal advice? Some, you can expand this answer also. If management and TCWG are involved, then you can also report to next higher level authority. You can expand this answer. But in this revision video, I am covering all the critical points. Next higher level authority, like if you're auditing a subsidiary company, there could who is the higher level authority beyond the TCWG of subsidiary company? Management of the holding company. All right, so you can report to them. But there will always be if any for this, and if there is no such higher level authority, then the final conclusion is please obtain legal advice. All right, just to ensure that you write an expanded answer, that is why I expanded this particular point. But finally it will end at consider the need to obtain legal advice. Now there are a couple of questions which are theory questions, but these are very interesting questions and that can be asked. So as an auditor, during the course of audit, how can you get indications that there seems to be a non-compliance? Just think about all bad things, man. If there are too many cash transactions, if there are unaccounted transactions, if there are transactions with no invoices, all right, or no documents, all right, or if there is something unusual that you notice, if there have been raids, search, seizure by the income tax department, by the tax departments, all right. So look at this: investigations by regulatory organizations, unusual payment in cash, if there is an adverse media comment, look at this, unusual transactions with companies registered in tax havens. So you know such kind of corporate frauds that happen. So these are 3-4 points that you should remember, because this can be a good 4 marks 5 marks examination question. Look at this. Whatever, by whatever ways people try to evade tax, no, just buy at that. Okay, then this is in this particular question, you have to think from the angle of the management. What are the types of policies and procedures that can be implemented by management to assist in prevention and detection of non-compliance with the laws and regulations? Just think as if you are the management of the entity. How will you ensure that there is no non-compliance with laws and regulation? And in fact, if there is non-compliance, then it is at least detected. All right. Basically, how will you implement the internal control for that? So you need to ensure that your operating procedures are designed to meet legal requirements. So whatever purchase, sales, marketing, whatever you're doing, it should be designed to meet legal requirements. So whenever you're designing purchase, sale, automatically there should be a discussion of how to implement GST over there. All right. Instituting and operating appropriate systems of internal control. So designing and operating the system of internal control, both points written separately. Then employees should be properly trained. Employees should be properly trained. Then you should have legal advisors, to assist in monitoring legal requirements, like, you should have a battery of chartered accountants, company secretary, lawyers. Yes. Then you should maintain a record, a separate register for significant laws and regulations which entity has to comply. And you should also maintain a separate register record of complaints and non-compliances. So basically 2 points on internal control, then 1 point on training, 1 point on legal advisor, so 1 point on having an expert on board, and then 2 points on records. One, records of which a laws entity has to comply, and second, separate records of complaints or non-compliances. These are the types of policies and procedures that can be implemented by the management. So this is the most sensitive set of discussion when it comes to essay 250. Essay 250 is one of their favorite essays at final C level. Why? Because this essay is asking you to verify the compliances with such laws and regulations which can have a material impact, like taxation laws. Now after performing these procedures, if you realize that there are some arrears in repayment of, in the payment of tax dues and stuff, then those arrears which are more than 6 months need to be reported in the audit report under statement of CARO 2020. So yes, this is straight away connected with the discussion of statutory dues that is done in CARO 2020, and that is why essay 250 turns out to be an important essay. Thank you so much. This was a quick revision video on essay 250.